All right, we're back
Okay,
only
so
on Twitch this
yeah,
time.
sorry about that. Just had some technical difficulties. If you're kind of joining from other platforms, welcome. My name is Kevin. I'm joined by Mateo, and we are from 3DQ, which is an automated 3D printing startup working on products for unintended management of your 3D printers.
Yeah, and today's a bit of a special episode. Just to recap, unfortunately, we had to restart the stream, and I wasted my beautiful Yahtzee joke. But just to recap, today we'll be interviewing um, a couple of guys who've turned their 3D printing hobby into basically a profitable venture online, mostly through Etsy, in the space of tabletop gaming, game pieces, and other types of kind of video game and gaming accessories. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Um, so just as we kind of wait for everyone to come back, because obviously tech issue is kind of a bit of a bumpy thing. Why don't we do a bit of kind of housekeeping stuff? So, um, if you want, uh, one thing we're interested to hear, because a lot of these guys only a couple of years ago started with one printer, and now are running over, a couple of them are running over 10 printers. So we're interested to see, especially given that there's a lot of new people in the audience today, kind of what your experience with 3D printing is, whether you own a printer yourself.
Or whether you got your own print farm at home.
Yeah, we'd love to hear, because that'll also help us kind of guide the type of questions that we'll be talking to them about. So, just again, we have a live stream where we stress test Quinly. That live stream is running 24/7 on 3D Loop. You can kind of see it down here. So that's if you're interested in the Quinly product. Um, we've shipped out uh,
Seven.
7 kits last Friday. We were
Yeah, so
working.
these are the first 7 kits we've sent out for the Ender 3. So these have gone to reviewers. So we'll be getting some feedback. Public will be getting some feedback on our kits. How does it feel, Michelle, to have this product out in the world?
It's very scary.
Very
No,
scary.
it's super exciting to finally, like, because we've been using this tech in-house for 2 years, and before I started the company with Steph, I was using it, and now giving people the ability to run their printers unmanaged or like without babysitting them, I think would be awesome. I'm super happy that we've gotten the tech to a place where we can just ship it out in an inexpensive kit
Yeah.
to anyone. Yeah, so I'm really excited. Um, and then in regards to the kit, just before we get into these interviews, the 2 rounds of early bird are sold out. The pre-sale is ending tomorrow, and the pre-sale is like heavily
hmm
discounted for early adopters, and it includes 3 months free of the Quinly printer, unattended
Yeah. So
printer
so regular
software.
price $199,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get it one more day for $97.
$97. Yeah.
$97 to and this is to automate your printer. You don't have to babysit. You can go for lunch. So definitely a huge benefit just from having this.
Yeah, and some good news for those of you who have joined the early buy. We're planning to ship the kits about a month early, so we were
hmm
talking about mid-January. Now it's looking like um, early to mid-December.
Yeah. So
So just in time.
maybe a Christmas
You
gift.
just hopefully in time for Christmas.
Maybe Santa will come down the chimney with it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. I'm sure everyone has come back or decided not to come back at this point. So, 3D printing for fun and profit, uh, and gaming collectibles, game pieces, and tabletop accessories. So we're interviewing 2 people live today and 2 write-ins. Um, they're all in have actually quite different products despite all being in the same kind of gaming space. So it's going to be interesting to talk to them about the various challenges they faced scaling up and like basically how they built their hobby into a business. Um, so if you're a maker or entrepreneur yourself, I think you'll probably find these interviews quite interesting. Um, or if you run a print lab, because many of these guys have set up their own like print labs in house or multiple printer setups. And I would highly recommend that as we talk through them, you check out their Etsy stores, because some of the things, like you'll see, but like the prints that they're doing are really creative and really impressive.
And they get some pretty high quality out of them.
Yeah, and given that Christmas is coming up, I know a few people who would be super into like picking up a couple of their things. So I would highly recommend kind of taking a peek at their store throughout the stream. Um, so first up, we've got one of our write-ins. He's Bogdan from BK Print. He runs a shop that with Catan sets. So
Yeah.
this is really cool. It's near and dear to me because
As you saw, like on the
there's
table, we had a
I've got my own 3D printed Catan set.
the whole set's 3D printed. It's got
Yeah.
little magnets in it and everything.
And then secondly, we'll have Ben from Mystic Fantasy Craft, who's got a whole bunch of different kind of gaming, pop culture related 3D prints, a couple of like dual color prints too, which will be interesting to talk about. Then third, again in person, we'll have Sam from 3D Design Bro. I really like his kind of value statement, who says gamers can't be organized,
I
because
don't know any organized gamers.
well,
So- well,
potentially after discovering
after
these
discovering
products,
this, you know,
yeah.
might change that.
So that's gonna be cool. He's got some really amazing dual color and extremely high quality prints. So it'll be interesting talking to him about like how he maintains the yield rate on the prints. And then finally, we'll a write-in will have Brent from Shop Level Up Games, and he's got these incredible D&D set pieces, and like it's kind of crazy the variety and the quality of parts that he's offering on his store.
Yeah, just manually doing all of these. Like there's so many different ones. Like I can't wait to see what he says about his organization.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got like 213 unique listings, so sounds like a nightmare in terms of managing. So it'll be interesting to see what he had to say about it. Okay, so let's start off with Bogdan from BK Print. So he wrote into us, and he does primarily Catan sets. He's located in Vancouver, Washington. So the other Vancouver,
The other, the
not
mirrored
Canadian ones.
version.
And he's got, yeah, so he wrote into us, and kind of what's quite interesting is, despite having this massive store, you can see he has 1,200 sales here. He actually only got started with 3D printing this January.
This
So
January.
like less than a year ago,
That
which
is-
is kind of a testament now to how nowadays accessible 3D printing is. And like you can look at, he's printing these incredibly detailed tiny parts. So I think the tech
a step up from these little simple geometry houses.
yeah, our little blocky houses. But yeah, it's kind of, I think it's a testament to how far the 3D printing tech has come in terms of, and this is something we'll see with all of these products, but just how like the level of quality you can get out of desktop printers. So let me go into what he's had to say. So he got his first printer last January, or this January, just under a year ago, with zero experience. And since then, he's owned Ender 3s, CR20s, CPO 1s, an Ender 5 Plus, a Polaroid 3D printer, which I love, in parentheses, he says horrible. And ultimately, he settled on 4 Prusa i3 MK3s and 8 Prusa Minis for basically for all of his production. And we'll get into this later, but he was mentioning it's all set up in his house because he has to manage the printers directly. And there's like not enough power in his house to run all of these machines. So it's kind of funny.
Honey, can you turn the lights off? I got another print to
Yeah,
do.
like at least he doesn't have to pay for heating, I guess. So one of the things we asked him was, how do you handle the high volume of like unique parts and also all the job scheduling that's required to go into that? So you can see like just on his shop, the amount of variation between parts is pretty high. It's mostly these small, so I guess that's why he has the Prusa minis, but it's these small sets of Catans. And so the way he deals with the scheduling of the prints is he's basically keeping track of what's popular at the moment, um, and trying to build up inventory ahead of time. So he's always doing these kind of calculations of how much inventory is required, and then setting that going on different printers. And I think we spoke to him on a call quickly earlier. He was mentioning how he's basically dedicated certain printers to certain colors and certain types of parts. Every SD card on each printer has the like appropriate models that he needs.
Don't mix up those SD cards.
Yeah, which we know before, like when we were setting up our print farm, doing all the calibration here at 3DQ. So we run we have we have 36 enders in a print farm, and we have 51 printers total. And yeah, managing through an SD card was just a pain. So there's like there is once you start pushing into these higher volumes, like with him, he has 12 printers. It does get it gets very challenging to manage it. So that's kind of where I have.
So he mentions that his downtime is when he sleeps, naps, or forgets about his print. Like I've used to run or still kind of do run a 3D printing lab in my engineering program, and I have to say, you know, if I don't spend nights staying up until like 3 in the morning, then prints don't get done. So can definitely relate to that in terms of a manual scheduling system.
Yeah. So which was actually, I made this with one of the proto Quinly systems, and being able to print these 24/7 and not have to schedule around school was pretty amazing.
All right.
So next up, we've got one of our live calls, Ben from Mystic Fantasy Craft. I'm just going to connect him up, but why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, so Ben is from Connecticut and creates 3D-printed collectibles and gear. So he's got an Etsy store like I think most of these guys do. Kind of focuses also on Pokemon figurines, planters, and tabletop miniatures.
Ben, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, I've got you on the stream.
Okay.
How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Is there something we need to do to get my video going?
Nope, I've got it.
Oh, perfect.
Here we go. Cool. So why don't you tell us a bit about how you got into 3D printing and how did you come across printing in general?
Sure. So back in 2014, 2013 maybe, I was working at a company that had a 3D printer that you could just rent out kind of for fun. And that was the MakerBot, Maker Select, something like that. One of those like really nice ones that only like big companies could afford.
Yeah.
And I hated it.
Yeah, I've heard choice things about the old MakerBot extruder systems.
Yeah, I was really like way in over my head. But then I gave it a second try, maybe a year or two later. I picked up the Monoprice Mini Delta 3D. It's like a $200 unit. It's a Delta printer.
Is it like the Costal kind of this size, kind of small printer? I think it's like 20 centimeters.
Yeah, it fits like a coffee mug. It was like the biggest thing you could print.
That's tiny. Okay.
Yeah, and that was actually we were trying to print D&D minis for home use, and that was probably back in like maybe 2016. And so that one was okay. It didn't do small prints very good, mainly because I didn't really have it dialed in that well. So then, actually, my business is turning 1 year old tomorrow, I believe.
Oh, congratulations!
Thanks.
Ours is 2 in a couple days, actually.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a big birthday celebration.
Yeah, we've got business birthdays.
So we decided, me and my business partner, who couldn't make the stream, but we picked up a Anycubic Photon because obviously you can see in some of the pictures you have up that they make really, really nice minis.
Yeah, like one of these.
Wow.
Yeah, so the quality on those is far surpasses pretty much anything you can get out of an FDM printer. And even these are some of our earlier things we printed, but we got it like real dialed in.
Yeah, they look awesome. For in terms of like, given that you're working with both FDM and SLA, going forward, how do you think, like, where do you think you'll see FDM being used, and where do you think you'll see SLA?
So the way we use it is our FDM printers handle anything that's over 6 inches or so.
Okay.
Because the original Anycubic Photon couldn't do anything bigger than 6 inches. So we kind of split the business of we do the minis on the Photon, and we do anything larger than that. We ended up picking up the Artillery Sidewinder X1. And I really, really like that printer. In fact, we liked it so much, we bought 5 more of them.
Oh, that's
Wow.
awesome. So how many printers do you have now?
We are up to 6 printers,
Nice.
counting the Mini Delta, but that one just sits in the garage. I don't really use that one. So realistically, more like 5.
So are those all SLAs then, or
No, those are the Sidewinders. Those are,
oh, I see.
yeah,
Um,
FDM.
so how many FDM printers do you have?
We have 5 FDM printers and then the 1 SLA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're kind of interested. What kind of print surfaces do you use for your FDM printers?
We actually use the stock bed on the Sidewinders because they're like a ceramic glass. So they're really good because we keep our bed temperature at about 65 to 70 degrees Celsius. And other than like if it's leveled incorrectly, we've had no issues with it sticking well. And then once the print is done, it pops right off.
Yeah. Those ceramic coated glass are quite good for that. Have you found, so did you open up your Etsy store? You opened it up a year ago, and I'm assuming that was with the one printer you had, right? Or have you already purchased some extra?
When we opened the store, we had the 2 printers. We had the SLA printer, the Anycubic Photon, and the Mini Delta, which I technically had, and I started a couple small prints with. And then we kind of worked our way up to our first Sidewinder and printed from there.
How did you find the like, did you encounter any challenges with as you scaled up to more and more printers? Because one thing that's somewhat unique about 3D printing on Etsy, or just 3D printing in general, is that a lot of people, it's very accessible because a lot of people produce on demand, and you don't have any sort of like retooling cost other than setting up good,
Or doing your slicing?
yeah, doing your slicing well. So how did you find, as you got more and more printers, did your workflow change at all? Like, how do you deal with scheduling what could potentially be a different workload every single day?
So we started by keeping a really big inventory. Actually, back in March, before the whole COVID thing happened, we were ramping up to do our first convention in the area. And then basically the week that everything got shut down in March, was when we were supposed to have our convention. So we just had a bunch of stock on hand. And so after that, we kind of switched to a print on demand service. So we'll ramp up conditionally. Like this Halloween, the No Face masks and the Darth Nihilus masks were selling almost faster than we could print them with 5 printers.
So you're saying you get quite a few sales. We've got a question. Is your Etsy store and like through 3D printing your full-time job?
No, I'm actually a software engineer by day, which is why I really it was one of the main reasons I picked 3D printing as like our side business. Was I could kind of set the printers and then in the morning and let them go while I'm working.
Cool.
Yeah, so I guess kind of just scheduling, you can kind of go to work, sets after setting things up, and then you come back, you get your product done, and it kind of just works that way to as a decent side business.
I like this question. Who's the best healer parser in your guild?
Honestly, all our healers are pretty trash. But
Oh no.
I've got a healer named Fuzzbucket who gives me buffs, so I'm going with him.
Okay, nice. Um, how's the so it's interesting hearing that you had a ton of stock on hand because of COVID. Have you a lot of people have been getting into 3D printing because of COVID, and people are just diving into their hobbies. Have you seen like a noticeable effect, given that you guys only started pretty much a few months before COVID happened, but have you seen like a change in demand in terms of your products or the type of products that people were buying because of COVID?
Um, Not really. Like you said, we've only been around for a year. There's definitely a lot of seasonal things that happen. Like I said, the masks were really big for a while. Right now, as we get closer with the release of the Mandalorian, obviously we sell a lot of that armor and the Beskar bars and stuff. So it's really seasonal. In the spring, we sold a bunch of the vases that we sell. But nothing, we don't really sell anything COVID related, really. So we didn't see too much of a change in there.
So in terms of like your day to day, because you're doing this part time, like kind of walk us through if you have six printers, what does your day look like in terms of setting up prints, scheduling, figuring out um like what needs to be printed each day, that kind of thing.
Sure. So Etsy is really good about keeping you on a timeline because it'll tell you when you promised the customer you were going to ship something.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I'll just go by what needs to be shipped the soonest, or if it's a multi-part order, like the biggest thing we sell is the Mandalorian armor, and that's 8 individual pieces that have to print basically one at a time.
Is it on? Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up. Here it is. And so it's basically kind of you're going down the list of priority on Etsy, like based on order delivery.
Yeah, I try to do, first in, first out. So whatever's going to be due the soonest is what we'll usually start printing.
Do you
So,
often like batch prints? Because if you're, I'm assuming if you're working all day, you're not gonna like break through the middle of your workday to go and restart a print or something. Or maybe you do, I don't know.
no, I work from home full time as
Okay.
even before COVID, as a software engineer. So when stuff does go wrong, I can kind of just get up and fix it.
That's pretty handy.
That's good. Yeah. How many parts would you say you guys are printing per week now?
Um, Probably at least 15 or so.
Okay.
Because
Cool.
some of these bigger parts, like that armor that we're looking at, each of those shoulder pieces on my slicer settings takes about 24 hours to print.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, no wonder the quality, like the quality is incredible on these. It's kind of hard to get a sense of scale. Oh no, here's one. So these are pretty large parts.
Yeah, those are meant to be worn.
Like a full
Um,
chest piece.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's quite cool. So you're yeah, mostly so it's like a workload of a ton of big parts. So it gives you a lot of space to worry about schedule. What would you estimate your uptime is with your printers?
um, they pretty much run nonstop unless they have issues. So,
So I guess
um,
talking about issues, do you have a pretty high yield? Like these are some pretty big parts. Like I can't see there being too much going wrong, but like what's your yield like, and how do you deal with problem prints?
so far in the year that we've owned our sidewinders, and the reason I'm focusing on those is because that's kind of the direction we went ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the anicubic photon, but the market right now is so saturated with people who can just make their own minis that
Yeah.
we kind of wanted to get away from that. But the sidewinders have been pretty reliable. So far, we've only had two major issues. One of them, one accidentally almost caught on fire, but that was my fault.
Okay.
And then the other one happened very recently. I was having bed heating issues where the bed was getting so hot that it was actually melting the support layers.
Oh wow. So it was like some kind of thermal runaway issues.
Yeah, and they're usually pretty good about catching that kind of stuff. But the one thing I do have to say for artillery is they're usually pretty quick. In the case where I accidentally lit my printer on fire, they sent us out a whole new extruder
Oh,
in like a
Wow.
week.
That's wonderful. Um, cool. Yeah, like it's super interesting to hear. I think in terms of the guests we're going over today, you guys are unique in that, or you, and I think Brent are the only guys that do like really massive prints. So it is interesting to hear how the kind of handling the workload changes. If you were to kind of give yourself advice at the beginning of the year around 3D printing, um, what would you like? What would you say? What would you watch out for?
Um, that's a pretty good one. In terms of from like a business side, I would say that the most time that we wasted was trying to chase fads. So, like you can see our Among Us crew members up there. They're cute and they're cool, but there was like a million people printing those. So I think we only ended up selling two.
Yeah,
Not that it really like it took a lot of time, but you know we're shifting as a business to where we want to focus on things that we enjoy rather than trying to chase like what the current fad is, because some of our best selling items are games that haven't been out in years.
that's actually, I think that kind of ties into one of these questions from chat, which was, um, it's like a big topic of
Yeah.
discussion with 3D printing is how like how to avoid any sort of copyright kind of issues, because yeah, there's like how have you guys tried to deal with that, or do you worry about it at all?
So there's kind of two levels to that with 3D printing. So the first is if we use other people's files, we make sure that they're open files, or they're under the Creative Commons where anyone can use them, and we make sure that it's okay with the person before we print them. Which is a big problem sometimes in the 3D printing space. But then the other one is obviously the copyright from like big companies like Nintendo or Blizzard for all the World of Warcraft stuff we have. And the as far as I know, in my opinion, the book is still kind of out on that one, on whether it's
Yeah.
3D printing files are covered under the art clause, where if you're making art, you're making files and stuff. But so far Nintendo hasn't come after us. So
Yeah, I think the kind of soft consensus right now is that if you remodel something, it's kind of considered derivative work, like how fan art would be considered. Blizzard doesn't tend to go after people for fan art.
Yeah, like I don't think they sell their own 3D printed products.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. When these companies, like some companies get into a big stink about IP, but it seems like the jury's still out when it comes to 3D printing. But that's quite interesting to know. Um, so thank you for joining us. We're gonna transition over to the next speaker. Um, maybe kind of to play us out, are there where do you see the future of kind of FDM printing going? Do you think it's still gonna have a solid hold in like the niche market, or do you see it eventually working its way into kind of final products that you might buy in a store at some point?
I think it will still have its uses for, and we ran into this a little bit, for customability. You can still customize the things you're 3D printing instead of sending it to a company for mass manufacturing. I do think now that SLA printers are getting really big, like the Peopoly one, where you can basically print an entire helmet in one go. I think those will start to become cheaper and more popular. But I still think FDM is going to have its place because it's the one downside of resin printers is resin is really, really brittle.
It's also super toxic if you
Yeah.
don't cure it correctly.
Yeah, like I work with an SLI printer, and I know one guy who like didn't wear gloves and he built up an allergy to the resin.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Get
to
it
mention it
handled.
gets everywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Ben.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time, and it's really cool getting some insight from kind of your journey and your store.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's switch over now to here, why don't you introduce Sam while I switch the scenes over?
Sure. So Sam is from 3D Design Bro. Is he with us? Or...
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you, Sam. So Sam is 32, married with 3 kids, and lives in Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a bit about your background? You know, how did you get started with 3D printing, and where has it taken you?
So I got started with 3D printing, I guess really about a year ago. To create a comment thing. That from your other interviewers, my brother actually got me in it. He had a 3D printer first, and he was kind of into it. And then I kind of come from the serial entrepreneur background. So my first thought was, how could we, use this to make some income, side money? And we had the idea of doing like planters and stuff like that on Etsy, which is very outdone. Everybody does that, and that's what we first thought. That didn't end up really getting off the ground. So then in late 2019, I bought my first printer on my own, and that's when I kind of came up with my shop as it is today. And I've been running 3D Design Bros. I would say really January of 2019 is when I started to really, get products out there and take it, somewhat seriously and start selling my stuff through Etsy.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess it's kind of interesting. A lot of the guys we're talking to today have actually only started quite recently. So it seems like a lot of entrepreneurial people, now that the tech has become easy to use, can focus. I guess my sense is that people are able to focus more on actually coming up with products and not tinkering with their printers all day. Yeah, how would you say your first experience was like with like getting your own printer, like kind of the maintenance versus the actual production part of it?
Yeah, so mine was pretty good. I'm not a kind of engineer technical guy. I'm not a mechanic. I don't like, doing work on cars. I wasn't the kid that took apart his Nintendo growing up and put it back together. Like that was not me. So I went with kind of the tried and true most popular one out there for beginners, and I bought the good old Ender 3 printer, and that's what I started
Nice.
with. And that was definitely within my wheelhouse. I was able to get it set up. I was able to get it printed or printing without a whole lot of issue. It was pretty easy right out of the box, which was nice. And yeah, I would say my biggest learning curve to start with was all the terminology in the industry. Like I said, I don't come from an engineering background or anything, or a software background. So kind of learning about infill and parameters and, first layer height, like all the lingo that is out there surrounding this was a lot of education for me to start with.
How did you find in terms of that learning curve, like how did you what was your main resource for that? Because and one thing is I definitely like Ender 3 is a pretty great first printer. It's kind of what I recommend to everyone, and it's what we run 51 of here at 3DQ.
Pretty easy to work on.
Yeah, there's a reason we did our automated kit for those, because I think it's the most accessible one of the most accessible printers there. Yeah, so how did you kind of get over that initial learning curve?
Yeah, so I mean, YouTube, like everything. There's a lot of really good guys out there on YouTube putting out great videos when it comes to 3D printing that walk you through slicer profiles, walk you through, what things are when they happen. So, I mean, it was a lot of starting out with where I'd Google little pieces of plastic go from one part to another part, and I learned, oh,
Yeah.
that's called stringing, you know and then you start to put those things together and you start to watch enough YouTube videos and you pick up things here and there on why certain things happen, and then you can kind of take it back and find out where your profile might be going wrong, and that's causing those issues.
I
So
remember.
yeah, like everything in life, YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the first when I got my first printer, I had this issue where like the top layer would be kind of
Wavy.
bubbly,
Oh yeah.
and it took me over a week to figure out that that was called pillowing. And so I didn't. I was like, has anyone
How
had this
to
problem?
fix air pocket
Yeah, I couldn't
bubble
find it.
texture.
Pretty much the same kind of yeah, basically like the learning curve is really steep, I think, still just with the crazy terms there are. So in
Mhm.
terms of your like setup now, you started with the Ender. Are you still running Enders? How many printers have you grown to at this point?
So we have 5 printers right now. I still have the original Ender 3 that I started with. That's the only Ender 3 I have. I shortly went from that to the Ender 5 Pros. So I have 3 Ender 5 Pros, which have been my majority workhorse printers. When I was getting into it and learning more, a lot of things I read and saw were that um, the Ender 5s have the Z axis that moves, opposed to the bed, which is being the Z axis, opposed to the extruder head being the Z axis, and that can result in what I've been told is better quality prints. So I made the switch to Ender 5 Pros, and they've really been working well. So I have 3 Ender 5 Pros that I'm running, and then I actually just put in production a Prusa Mini last month, which has been great. By far is my favorite printer so far. And if I could get 6 of them, I would. But they're of course 2 to 3 months back ordered.
Yeah. Um,
But
so what inspired you to do organization for gaming particularly? There are a bunch of people in chat telling us
Mhm.
to get you into PC gaming accessories as well, not just consoles.
yeah. So I guess my kind of background a little bit on it is I've always been a gamer, I guess. I did it in high school, I did it in college, big into Halo, Call of Duty, all that stuff. And then I got married in college, had some kids, and just changed of life, and it wasn't a priority for me for a long time. Took about 10 years off, and then kids got to an age where I could have a little more free time for this kind of stuff, and I started getting back into it. I went out and bought the Xbox One a couple years ago, and started getting into gaming again. And it was a big eye opener for me when I came back, because the industry was completely different from when I left it. When I stopped playing in 2007, 2008, 2009 era, Twitch wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
streaming wasn't a thing. So I came back to an industry that was brand new, and I quickly discovered the industry it's grown into. So this year 2020, video games, video gaming, streaming, all inclusive, is a $60 billion a year industry, and by 2023, just in 3 years, it's expected to grow to 200 billion,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
It's pretty
And you
wild.
you look
Yeah,
at
you're saying you've
yeah.
like video games have kind of come big recently, like definitely a lot in terms of the pandemic. People are staying indoors doing this kind of thing. How else has your business changed recently? Have you had any benefits or challenges due to COVID?
Yeah, so definite challenges when it comes to our 3D filament, our plastic that we buy.
We've seen the same
I,
thing.
I've tried a lot of brands, and quality control is a little lax in some of them. So you know, when I first started, Hatchbox was my go-to, and I would say they still are, but they nearly just stopped producing, as far as I
Yeah.
could tell, for all summer. So I had to scramble to find other things. I switched to Push Plastic, which I could get their product, but it was more money. And I had some quality controls issues with their plastic, specifically their white, would clog some machines. So right now I kind of do a combination of different brands. I use Hatchbox for some colors that I can get. I use Preline for a lot of my colors. They've been a pretty consistent supplier for me, and I still do use Push Plastic for certain things, just because they hands down have been the most reliable in terms of getting plastic to me.
Yeah.
And then actually, printer shortages too have been a big problem for me. I there was a time we were over the summer months with COVID, we were backlogged. I think at one point 140 orders in the hole, just because we couldn't print things fast enough because we didn't have enough printers to print. And I couldn't get printers. You know, Prusa was 3 months out. Enders were even, weeks out, months out. So
Yeah.
I tried buying, I bought a monoprice printer, which was, it appeared to be their version of the original Prusa MK3 or whatever it is. Their big seller. Had the same sort of, style and extruder head and things like that. But it was a terrible printer. I had it for like 3 days and I boxed up and sent it back. It wasn't
Wow.
even worth trying to print on.
Yeah. Actually,
Um,
just because we going over a couple of things, I thought it was interesting the filament discussion. When COVID happened, we actually had the same problem, and we would run like 51 printers here. What we ended up doing is actually just getting our own filament made because with our automated printing system, these printers, kind of the tech that 3DQ has, uh, allows the printers to self-clear parts. And so the self-clearing tech is pretty reliable, but then what we quickly found was that having an unreliable or inconsistent
Yeah.
filament quality would just kill us.
Like you get too many
Yeah.
defects with
Yeah.
like you can't make a
Yep.
proper profile for your
Yeah,
materials.
it was a big challenge, and then in the end we ended up buying like 300 kilos of kind of custom branded PLA from one of the
Yeah.
manufacturers.
Yeah. I mean, and not to mention, if you're running different branded filament, more than likely you have a different profile for each
Yeah.
filament brand, and now you're having to make sure you're printing the right profile based on the filament you have in your printer.
It's
So
exactly.
yeah, it could be a real problem.
We now have to set up, we try to buy our own, but there's still shortages even with like the manufacturer we get from, but we basically have profiles for every single material. We'll set up even different profiles for like nozzle. I think actually something I'm curious about in your case, because you do have like quite a wide variety of products, something we've found, and with the automated system, we're printing like thousands or tens of thousands of parts, or like over the course of the last couple months or so, we've been printing thousands of parts, and we found that um, optimizing the slice settings for a particular part you might need a lot of, would save a ton of time with the automated printing. Like we did like a test run of the COVID headbands, and we printed 900 of them in 5 days, and we found like the original model that we made took about, I think it was 75 minutes, and just through slicing alone we were able to bring that down to 35 minutes and get rid of post processing. So and then you multiply that over 900 parts.
It's just exponential.
I'm sure you've seen something in your case where do you spend that extra time up front, investing in optimizing particular parts, especially since you have such a high volume of orders, it sounds like.
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time with our profiles, and something that I learned quickly, early on in this business, was I I would say I let my prints take a little bit longer than they probably have to ensure quality. You know, so I don't want to try to turn something around in 2 hours when if I do it in 2 hours and 15 minutes, it guarantees me a much more consistent and better looking product. Because what was happening that we figured out is we were trying to play with slicer profiles. We were trying to get infill, you know, flirt with the line of infill between enough and not enough and get it just over the line of enough and try to, you know, mess with parameters to, you know, get us the products pumped out as quickly as we could.
Yeah.
And in the end, with filament changes and things like that and color changes, it would just cause more delays and more harm than good than if we were just to have, you know, take a little bit more time with the prints to ensure, you know, good quality. So all of our stuff that we sell, we test print before we ever list it.
Yeah.
Obviously we gotta get it printed anyway to take pictures of it. So I play with the settings before I even, you know, get it listed, and I'm comfortable that 99% of the prints that I will print of that item will be right, you know, and be successful prints.
So you're running at like
because,
a 90% kind of yield rate for those parts.
right, because there's nothing worse than having a job, you know, either fail halfway through or worse, complete, you know, finish to 100%, but the quality be bad
Not
because
good.
it under extruded or it whatever happened, and you're redoing anyway, and you just doubled your print time now for that one order or whatever it may be.
So something I'm interested in. So I've mentioned previously that, you know, I worked at a print lab, and, you know, we had to deal with, you know, different files for every print just on the nature of kind of prototyping, you know, using SD cards to schedule and, you know, with classes. So you have a family, like you've got a primary job. How do you deal with your scheduling, and also just your day-to-day life?
Yeah. So I use Astro Print on all my printers. So we have 5 Astro boxes that are, you know, the Raspberry Pis to, you know, manage the prints for us that we send the files to the printer for. Initially we did the whole SD card thing like everybody does, and like everybody says and finds out, it's a nightmare. So we quickly switched to the Astro Print. So that's how we you know, manage our print library and how we send prints to the printers. As far as actual managing of, you know, the day to day, like your first or your previous interviewer or interviewee, I work from home. My office is here at home. I'm a real estate, you know, agent by day, so I have the flexibility to be home, and that's kind of what started me in this business to begin with. I wanted something I could, you know, do kind of on the side. But essentially I get up in the morning and I see what the orders I got, and I, like your previous interviewee said too, Etsy does a great job to tell you what is due when and when it needs to go out based on your lead time. So kind of we FIFO everything, first in first out. So if something's due that day, it's not printed, we print it. One thing that we have done, that we've implemented, that has been real helpful is I print doubles of everything if I can, if not more.
Oh, I
So
see. Okay.
if I get an order, if I get an order for one universal headset mount in pink, I print 2 of them, no matter what, as a way to just kind
That's
of
an
build up
interesting
our
strategy.
inventory.
Yeah.
And a lot of our products have, you know, inlaid, embossed logos of different, you know, we can do in different colors. So those are small, so we print those 12 at a time, and then we
Okay.
just have stock of those.
Just keep stock. So it's almost like it's kind of like a production on demand, but then you're basically doing your kind of inventory prediction.
Build up based on
Yeah.
what you're selling.
Yeah, it's almost like live kind of that's pretty interesting strategy. There's somebody asking
and I
in,
would say,
oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
There's just
I was
someone
gonna say,
asking in
I would
chat.
say,
Oh,
yeah,
hold on.
go for it. I think I see the wood grain.
Yeah, I think that's not 3D printed, right?
That's not 3D printed, no. So that's
Okay.
just kind of a secondary market that we got, you know, as a kind of an add-on for some of our products, you know, kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
bundle stuff together type deal. So that's a 3D, that's a plastic, molded grain type thing.
I'm
But yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
we to get back to the two batch system, we definitely don't have inventory, like not enough. That's a goal of ours, is to get to a point where we are stocked of inventory, and when orders come in, we are pulling from inventory, and then we're backfilling inventory with the
Okay.
printers. We haven't been able to get to that point solely based on our order amount.
Yeah.
We get enough orders where our printers are running nonstop. One thing I've learned tonight through your guys' interview process is I clearly have too few printers,
Yeah, it sounds
based
like
on
it.
based on the number of orders I'm doing,
Yeah.
compared to the other guys who got 13 printers going. And not to say I have more orders than them, but I think I do, and I don't have near as many printers, which I need to look at that, because I think I'm probably working a lot of hours where I could save myself some time by adding some printers.
I think one of the kind of interesting things, and this sort of links back to how we run our farm here, um, was that we found so 3DQ has the automation technology, right, that allows printers to self-eject parts. And
Yep.
we found like that one of our biggest points of downtime out before that was operator availability. Like the next guy that we'll talk about as well, he was running, or no, sorry, it was actually the first guy, Bogdan. He's doing this full time on his 12 machines, and he's still only able to get about 70% uptime. And a lot of the more like industrial print farms that we've spoken to, or even just kind of university print farms, um, always sit somewhere between like 60 to 80% uptime. Sometimes we've seen some people say it's like lower, but they don't have as much demand. Um, and so what we found worked really well for us was actually focusing on getting rid of that kind of operator intervention. Um, because now we can set is if we spend the time up front, invest the time up front into like what you do, make sure that the yield rate on your parts is in the high 90%. You can kind of set that looping on a printer, and obviously we're on Ender 3s, but they're not fully stock. But
Hmm.
like we can set it looping for a number of days
Yeah, and
sometimes.
we don't get that deficiency in quality that some other types where they just like physically push the prints off like a normal
Yeah.
bed. Like we don't have that
Yeah, it's not like
degrading of
a
calibration.
it's not like a belt printer, but I mean that's specific to technology, but automation in general was
Hmm.
it was interesting to see just how much our operators' workflow changed when now I would say most of his time is actually spent doing probably maintenance and preparing files
Hmm.
rather than like removing parts and cleaning print beds and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to hear. It seems like the kind of the solution with regular printers tends to be just get more printers because then when
Yeah.
you're there you can start more prints, right? Um,
Right. Well, I think too. I think it's not only get more printers, but like for my specific application, we have color options, right? So I offer 14 different colors, but I don't have 14 printers. So
right.
I'm having to do color change, and that's actually probably my biggest time suck,
Hmm.
is changing filament colors.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, I'd have 14 printers and they'd all run the same color, their color, an individual color on that printer. But even that wouldn't necessarily be the case, because I sell far more things in black than I do in
Yeah.
pink. So I'd probably have 5 printers on black alone and none on pink. But then all of a sudden I get that pink order, I gotta switch out one printer. Which one's it gonna be? Which color am I taking off? Am I taking black off? So for me, it's color swaps is
Hmm.
the most time consuming thing that I have found, and I and packaging. So I mean, we send everything out, we mail
Yeah.
everything out, right? So I got to be here. Someone's got to put the part in the box and put the label on it and stuff like that.
How much would you estimate that that your printer uptime is right now?
I would say that they run a 24-hour day. They probably run, I would say, 16 hours a day. So pretty much all of my prints, I would say my average print time is 4 hours, 4.5 hours. So I get
Okay.
up in the morning and I set them all up and they all go, and then I switch them in the middle of the day. Like I said, I work from home, so usually I'm back in front of the printer within I would say no more than an hour of when it finished, unless it's just a abnormal day where I'm not home all day. But I'm usually right there when it finishes. I take it off, I start the new print. That goes until dinner time. Do that again, and then one more round of that right before bed. You get a new print going, and then I'm not getting up in the middle of the night. I used to set alarms when I had fewer printers. I'd set alarms for
Yeah.
12:30, 1:30 in the morning
I think we've
when
both
I knew
been
stuff would
there.
be done. Yeah. I don't do that anymore. So really, I say 16 because you got that, things are probably finishing up around that, 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, and I'm not getting up anymore until, 7:30, 8 by the time I get down here. So that's why I say, that and not full 24/7.
Hmm.
All right.
But
I think we're kind of running up
Past our
past our time. I don't know if you want to stay and talk after the official show, but I'd be interested in
Mhm.
kind of keep going. I know Kevin has to leave pretty
Yeah.
soon.
But yeah, thank you very much. Super interesting to learn about everything that you're doing, what different farms are doing. It's interesting seeing some parallels between you and is it Ben or
Yes.
yeah, in that like you both work from home, and that has allowed you to kind of turn this into your side business. Like where if you didn't work from home, you wouldn't be able to restart prints or do that kind of thing. So
right.
again, thank you for your time, and I gotta leave, but enjoy the rest of the show with
Sure,
Mateo.
sure.
Gotta leave him on
Right.
his own.
Kevin's abandoning.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thank-
I'm definitely gonna be watching till the end of your stream here. So if you got more questions and you want me to come back on, just jump back in the Discord room and I'm happy to answer questions if you got any.
Sure, yeah. I think if there's enough people sticking around at the end, I'd love to chat a bit more about specifics. But there's one more guy I want to get to, and let's see how the end of the stream goes, and we can reconvene later.
All right, sounds
All
good.
right. All right, it's just me carrying it solo.
You can do it.
So one of our final guys, unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it on the call tonight, but I thought it would be pretty interesting to go over um his store because he does some really incredible prints as well. And I feel like it's kind of too good to pass up. So this is Brent, Brent's shop Level Up Games. He does an insane manner of D&D kind of miniature tabletop sets for D&D and for other games, kind of tile sets that really can take your game to the next level. He's actually also in BC. He lives in Osoyoos, and like everyone here, which I found pretty interesting, he got into printing relatively recently. It was only 2.5 years ago, and now he has over a dozen printers. So, just quickly going over his story, he got his first printer 2.5 years ago. It was an Anycubic i3, and he bought it because he saw like cool terrain for D&D and really wanted to like just make his own terrain. Um, and after he kind of made it up the learning curve, which a bunch of the we've heard mentioned a couple times today, um, he basically he found that sticking to one filament would be the best thing and just dialing in a single option. So one of the biggest challenges he's had with printing that he mentions in written email to us is that actually with adhesion. And so, I mean, even we see this, having printed thousands of parts, bringing in new materials. There's a lot of, you can have issues with bed adhesion if things aren't dialed in, or as Sam had mentioned, sometimes the feedstock that you get can be inconsistent between batches or between brands. So yeah, so with Brent's thing, with his products, kind of adhesion was a big issue, especially with delicate parts like pillars, which you can see in a lot of the architectural kind of models he has on here. That was basically his main hurdle until he could bring his printing to a point where he could do it like commercially. So he actually uses he has 13 Anycubic i3s, and 2 Anycubic Chirons, which I personally haven't heard of, but the Anycubic i3s are super popular. And again, it's what's really fascinating to me is it's actually a desktop level, like it's a desktop class printer, but I think his products and the other ones we've seen tonight are a pretty amazing example of like the level of quality you can get with a $200 or $300 printer is like if I went to a hobby store and bought something like this, I probably wouldn't even look twice at whether it was 3D printed. And I think all the things we've seen tonight are really good at dispelling the myth that 3D printing can't be used for final products. I think it totally can, and I think these guys all prove that the level of detail when you take enough care with your prints is pretty amazing. One of the interesting common themes that seems to have come up through the stream is that the amount of printers, like the demand to the actual production capacity, seems to be quite limited. Partially due to COVID, I think, but also just everyone is talking about how they have a massive backlog of orders that they can't fulfill. And I mean, even Brent has a huge amount of orders. All of his parts take a long time to print. So like definitely you're limited in that in one case it's the number of printers you have, but it's also there's a whole bunch of limitations around the downtime that a printer has. So as Sam and Bogdan mentioned, at like essentially dedicating a schedule or being at home around to manage your printers, they're still getting around 16 hours per day, which is from speaking to people in industry who run print farms, maybe not as their primary business, but a single person running a print farm and getting 75% uptime is very impressive, especially for having about 10 or more printers. But in industry, the people we've spoken to, the print farms, they, in order to push, because 24 hours for, if you can go from 75% to near 100% uptime, that means for every 4 printers you buy, you wouldn't have to buy that 4th printer. Your 3 printers can do the work of 4. And so something that we've seen with automation is actually to fulfill orders of thousands of parts, we actually don't use that many, or we don't dedicate too many printers to particular orders. So recently we did an order, it was 2 different types of pieces, and I think we only put 3 printers ultimately on it, and it was about I think around 1,500 parts, and the 3 printers were able to get it done in about a week. So just squeezing out that extra kind of production capacity of your printers by giving them the ability to run in an automated way ended up being a huge boon for us, because in addition to that, you're not paying operators, or in this case, you yourself are not spending your valuable time managing the printers, and it allows you to offer either have a higher margin on your products or offer the products for a much more competitive price. So going back to Brent, he got into 3D printing for this because Obviously, one machine can make any one of these parts, and he has 213 unique items on his stream or on his store, which is like incredibly impressive. And um, we did write to him or had him answer like what the most difficult thing about scheduling such a workload is, because at any given point, someone could order one of like over 200 unique models. And even in our farm here, I don't think we've encountered that many unique parts, or at least we don't have that many parts in our library. And it's not like at any given moment somebody would order one of those parts. So something very interesting about the way he runs it is he's gotten orders for 10,000 plus parts before, and he's found it like extremely challenging because the part in question was the ear saver for COVID, and he found it challenging because ear saver, a full bed of them, only takes about an hour to print. So he found himself resetting it every single hour, and so he had to basically babysit his printers. He says 20 to 22 hours a day for 2 months nonstop, which is pretty, like that's pretty insane, I think, for one person to take on. Many companies would actually hire 3 shifts of people to run that. So yeah, he's got quite an interesting story in terms of actually on regular printers pushing the upper limits of what kind of volumes you can do. So he found that kind of a harrowing experience in terms of mass printing. He left us with a word of advice too. One thing he wished he knew before he got started with 3D printing was going into it knowing that it's a massive challenge and that you'll come across times where you don't know what's going wrong, and that in these moments you need to take a step back and take a big breath. I would say my lung capacity is above average with the amount of giant breaths I've had to take when working with 3D printers, because holy cow, sometimes it can be frustrating, but the upside is you have a machine that can print anything you want. I'm hoping we can probably get the guys that wrote in on a later show to talk about their story specifically, but I'd like to thank everyone who did come onto the stream or wrote in. It's really interesting getting all these different perspectives on like running the Etsy stores, and these guys really are pushing the higher volumes of 3D printing, and they're many of them are kind of one-man bands, 1 or 2 guys running a dozen printers or so. So it's quite interesting to hear kind of what at those higher volumes what the limitations are. So in terms of 3DQ stuff, just to mention again, the automation kits that we provide for Ender 3s are expected to ship about a month early. So we're hoping to ship them out the first week of December instead of mid-January, so that people can get them in time for Christmas and then use the automation to pump out a whole bunch of 3D printed Christmas gifts, as if your friends and family are not already sick of 3D printed Yoda heads. If you have any questions for us or for the guys on stream, they're in our Discord. You can join our Discord, ping them, or ping us, ask us about continuous printing or high volume 3D printing. All of the 3DQ staff is in there if you want to ask our engineers very engineering type questions. And make sure to also check out the continuous stream right here. That's actually one of our kits. We've been running it for I think 4 or 5 weeks now since we started the live streams, and it's already printed 600 parts. Let me just check that number. Roughly 600 parts, with almost no operator time. Obviously, we're pushing the limits, so sometimes you might see one of our guys' hands reaching in and fixing like a clogged nozzle or something. But that's the nature of live testing. So if you want to check it out, I definitely like poke your head in couple times a week, see what an automation kit could do for your printer. Unattended printing is really cool. Going back to scraping parts is not fun, I'll tell you that myself. Um, we also have, but you don't have to take my word for it, because we also have shipped 7 review kits out to a whole bunch of reviewers in a couple different countries, and we're expecting to get the first of the feedback soon, probably sometime next week or early the week after. And if you are interested in picking up an Ender 3 automation kit, the pre-sale is ending tomorrow, which is $97 with 3 months of the free unattended print management software. After Thursday, it will be going up to the normal price, which is $199, and you can pick that up at shop.3dq.com. Yeah, I mean, that's it for me. If there's anyone sticking around, I'd love to kind of continue the conversation with Sam. Let me just check the stream. Let's see. Excuse me. We still got 15 people in here. Do you want to continue, Sam, or?
Yeah, I'm good. If you got some more questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah. I'm interested. Let me switch over to the right view. This is now the, I guess, the after show. For the true fans.
That's right.
Of 3D printing. Do you do 3D printing on your stream at all, or?
No, so not yet. I actually have plans to, so the kind of when I came back to gaming, the whole world was different. So I started a Twitch channel like everybody else, and played around with that and had some fun with it. We built it up to about 1,000 followers, and then I did quit it for quite a while. And now it's just kind of there. So I actually do think I'm going to do a stream rebrand and turn it into a 3D printing stream, where we do something similar to this maybe, but haven't done it yet. Been kind of low on the priority, especially in this current holiday season.
Yeah, I'm sure you're gonna like
full
expect
focused on
massive amount of orders, right?
Yeah. But
how are you doing the multicolor prints? That was something I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so everything that we have is multicolored. That it's multicolored is just inlays. So the base print just prints with a gap where the logo goes, and then we print the logo separate and just inlay it into the base, and we'll just use some super glue or something like that to keep it in there. I think I'd like to try maybe some dual head extruders where it prints the other color right into it, but haven't gotten that far yet. Right now, we've adjusted our files so that the tolerance to accept the inlay logo is good enough to where we just punch them in. It takes 2 seconds to put them in, and we just keep rolling. When we first started doing it, it was a struggle. We were trying to make it too tight, and I was taking a little side cutter and trying to clean up the logo part, and it was a fight. We got it pretty dialed in now.
Actually, I'm curious. Speaking of like post production, do you still print? Do you print with skirts around the prints, or have you gotten rid of those?
We got rid of those.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I would say we made that change last month.
Nice.
Up until then, we were printing with the brim or whatever it is, not the one that has the full bed underneath it, but just the outline of the item.
Yeah, I
we
think
were doing that.
Skirt or brim. It's one of those very specific terms. I think a brim is touching and a skirt is not touching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a skirt. So we were doing skirts, and now we don't do anything. So all we do is that purge line in the front, and then it goes right into the actual item on the print bed.
Cool. Yeah, okay. That's actually what we found too. when you're printing high volumes of parts, like headbands, we printed a total of I think 3,500 of them. Like there were headbands for face shields, and
Okay.
the first I would say the first 500 we printed were with the outline, the brim, and like the person in charge of inventory and post processing hated it because they were basically C
Yeah.
shapes, and they would hook around each other on these thin little like outlines, and it was just a disaster to work with. We did a calculation, like once we
Right.
got rid of them, we basically saved 2 weeks of her time post
Wow.
processing. So
Yeah,
it's
we
cool to
don't.
see that you came
So we,
across the same thing.
yeah, we have all of our. Like I said earlier, I don't mind sacrificing 20 minutes, 15 minutes of print time if it means I can get an item that is, higher quality and ready to go. We don't do anything to our. We have no post processing other than if it's a logo. We got to punch the logo in. We do
Yeah.
that. Otherwise, it goes off the print bed into a box. We have no sort of flyers hanging off or stringers where we got to hit it with a heat gun. We
Mhm.
don't do any sanding. Everything comes off, you know, pretty much as perfect as 3D printing can be, in my opinion, and into the box. And I would say our Etsy reviews speak to that.
Yeah, totally. Like I mean, I was quite impressed with your models. Just we were spying on like the top surface finish on them. I'm trying to find which one it was. And yeah, like you can it's it's a game recognizes game, right? You can tell when someone's spent time dialing in like the top layer on these coasters, especially. I was like, okay, he spent some
Yeah.
time working on this.
And what I've found too, that's kind of even amazing, I guess, is the new Prusa Mini. So right now on all of our Ender machines, we run the print beds that are the textured magnetic ones that are real flexible.
Yeah,
Um,
yes, yeah.
which they do well, but the Prusa came with their steel sheet
The
that's more of
PEI.
a smooth. It's real smooth, and man, the backside of the prints, it's molded plastic. It's so smooth. It's really impressive what that print bed's able to do.
Show you one of ours
But
on that comes off the auto part release bed that we developed in-house. You get like
yeah,
it's pretty much a glass finish.
okay, yep, yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's
yeah,
more like what the Prusa's producing for me. It's super smooth.
yeah, it's awesome. It was
Yeah,
something we
it's
were
amazing.
considering when we designed. Do you know much about our like the tech we use in-house?
Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously, when you guys reached out to me, I looked you up and I saw your live feed, and I understand, from what I understand, it's, you got a kit that essentially puts the ender at an angle, and
Yeah.
you have a gravity assisted detachment system where you actually use the horizontal bar to release the item.
Yeah. And the key to it is actually the print surface material that we've developed,
Right.
because it's got kind of, I would say, most similar to your Prusa PEI in that it's really good at adhering at high temperatures, but once it cools down, there's no force. I have a video of chainmail, but I don't know how I'd like quickly throw it into the stream. Um,
Yeah, that's it.
but it's a maybe I'll
But
send it to you later, but it's a pretty good example
yeah,
of that. The properties of the bed. It's really like the tilted printer is kind of flashy and is the first thing that catches people's eye, but it's really all in that material formulation we came up with for the bed. Um,
and you don't have any, I guess, you personally, and none of your reviewers have come back with any sort of issues with the angle with it, maybe the layers drooping on the one side that's, hanging down.
yeah, that's like one of my favorite things to talk about. Uh, our production systems, it's not just angled, it's actually fully 90 degrees, and I do have an image of that if you want to look on the stream. Um,
Yeah.
and it really doesn't affect a weird transition. Okay, here we go. OBS is flaking out on me right now. Sorry, just give me a moment. I think I
Yeah,
can
that's it.
do. It's like detached all my files. That's awesome. But yeah, we print at 90 degrees, and the interesting thing about it is you can't even tell. It actually helps your bridging in some ways, because if you're bridging like along the direction of gravity,
Oh yeah,
it doesn't
sure.
droop.
Yeah,
And
right.
so
Absolutely.
the reason our production ones are 90 and not the kits is like 90 is really cool, and it lets us get a ton of printers all compact and together. Um, but really like it's not necessary for more of a desktop type solution, because you're not trying to fit, like we fit uh 40 36 printers in like a 10 by 25-foot room. um I'm really trying to get this video for you. Okay, here's
Yeah,
the
that's
chainmail.
okay.
Okay. This is actually, we would consider this a like semi-failed release, because the routine didn't
Yeah.
execute correctly. But you can see at the
Okay.
when it repeats, you'll see like it's got enough adhesion to do all of these tiny links and keep them in place during printing. But then once it releases the part, you don't have to worry about, like, the adhesion becomes so low that you can just slide it off with the nozzle. It should repeat here.
So I saw some of your videos where it actually used that horizontal crossbar to release it, and I guess my next question was going to be, since we were talking about my coasters
Hmm.
as an example, those are pretty low. So I
Yeah.
mean my X's and O's that are inlaid in those are only 3.5 millimeters thick. So you actually use the physical nozzle on lower stuff to push it off.
Yeah, and I actually have a video exactly for that. So I'll show you. We were doing ear savers. Give me a second. You can see I'm like really leaning into my screen here. But we were doing ear
Yeah.
savers, which were only, I think, 3 layers tall, so about a millimeter. And
Okay.
because there's no like stickiness left on the bed, you just slide them off. So then it's not like the nozzle is going to damage the parts in any way. Um,
Right.
I'll show you a video. Like with all this stuff, you kind of have to show the video. Okay, 1 second here. But yeah, you can do thin parts. We don't tend to do like 1 layer parts, only because there's too much risk of the nozzle scratching the print surface.
Right.
Even if it's
Yep.
like a tiny bit warped. Okay, I know where it went. This must be so exciting, just crawling through my documents on stream. Let's see where one. I think it's gone forever. Oh, I found it. I think. It's gonna take me a while to find it. We just took a ton of videos. It's all unsorted.
Yeah, that's you can send it to me.
Yeah, I'll send
You
it
guys
to
got
you
my email.
later. It's probably in our Discord too, but it's like one of those really thin ear saver
Yeah,
things.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would work. I think it would work just fine with these. 3 millimeters is
Okay.
pretty good. How did you find you said you mentioned you had a business partner, right? Are you running them, or is your business partner working on it too?
So no, so it's just myself. I don't have a partner. So
Oh, okay.
I think I said
Sorry.
so. My brother got me into 3D printing, and we thought we were gonna do like an Etsy store with planters, and then it just never kind of happened.
That's right.
And then
Okay.
I just kind of went off on my own and started, doing this kind of stuff. But yeah, so I do everything in my basement. That's where my office is. We actually remodeled the basement this year with the business in mind. So
Like
I
climate
got,
control and stuff.
yeah, so we got climate control in here. I got, certain outlets that are 20 amps to run the printers
Nice.
on. And I got down here and quickly discovered that it's about big enough for what I have right now. And if I add any more printers, I'm going to outgrow it immediately. So I have a, I have a, I have a 2-car attached garage to my house as well as a 2.5-car detached. So eventually it'll probably move out to the detached garage, and essentially I'll just take over that whole garage as, essentially what would be like a mini warehouse.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. We ended up we share space with another company here, and we set up in basically what's I guess it can be described as a warehouse. It's like not super finished. Um,
Yep.
and the other company is a woodworking company. So we had like
Okay.
30 printers out in the open with all the wood dust.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and it was not great.
That's
Uh,
not good. No.
so we actually ended up building a room around the machines and putting a AC in there, um,
Okay. Sure.
just to keep them cold. It's actually the warmest room in the building during the winter now.
Yeah, and I would say I haven't noticed. I know a lot of guys have concerns and issues with humidity, moisture level of the
Yeah,
plastic and keeping it dry and stuff like that. I don't do any of that. So I mean, my basement, I got a thermometer down here and a humidity tracker, and I would say I fluctuate between 30 and 50% humidity in here, depending on the time of year.
yeah,
In the winter, it drops down. In the summer, it gets a little bit higher. All my filament right now is stored on the ground. Once it once I use it, I crack the seal on and it's open and it's just on the ground, and I have not noticed any sort of effective, that it affects it much at all. So I guess 30 to 50%, maybe that's within tolerances for this plastic, but I haven't had any problems. I know some guys say it gets sticky and they have issues with it, but so far so good on my end.
I would say if you're printing it fast enough, it doesn't matter too much. Like
Right.
on our machines, we can run through a spool in about it depends what you're printing. Like when we're doing point 0.8 nozzles, a spool will last about just over a day, I think. And
Yeah.
so that doesn't even give it enough time to take up the moisture that would ruin the material.
Sure.
Um, Thank you, Flipsaw, for the video. Here I have a video of the 90-degree
Yeah, I see
printing
it.
now. But yeah, if you're like running high volumes and you're basically pumping out filament quickly, I don't think you have to concern yourself too much with humidity, with PLA, with stuff like nylon, like and TPU. TPU, you leave it out for a few hours and it's gone bad, depending on the formulation.
That's amazing. You print 90 degrees.
Yeah, this is one of our like one of our super old videos. Um, this is also in my basement too, back then. Um,
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, you can see it kind of like wiggles around as it gets released, like as the bed cools off, and then it just needs to be displaced. Um, it's not actually like smashing into. And this was an earlier prototype, so now it's a bit better than that, but
Hmm.
um, yeah. Okay, given it's past 7, I think we should probably wrap up.
Yeah.
But it was awesome talking to you a bit longer. And I'm sure we'll probably keep in touch after this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the Discord, so I'd love
Yeah,
to, stay connected. If you guys want to do another show, I'm always interested to talk 3D printing. You guys probably know a lot more than I do, so I'm always interested to hear what's going on.
yeah. I think definitely all the viewers, but myself included, like uh running like a one-man operation for because I think like our experience or what I hear is mostly talking to industrial people all the way down on the like single printer hobby level. So it's fascinating to me
Right.
to hear about kind of the challenges of scaling printing, because if you're running this kind of as a solo entrepreneur, you don't have the capacity to just throw more people at your print farm to have it run 24/7. So it's interesting to hear your like workarounds for stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the great things about this industry for me when I was looking at getting into it was the scalability of it and how you can scale it without people because, right? I mean, what's the workaround to printing 24 hours with 5 printers? Well, you print 12 hours with 10 printers. And really, the printer technology has gotten so far where printers are cheaper than people.
Yeah.
So, you can invest $200 to $500 in these printers and buy 10 more and they'll run indefinitely comparative to a weekly pay for a person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, the barrier to entry for 3D printing is so low right now. And I think interestingly 3D printing seems to kind of have challenges scaling, except of course with our automation kit, but it has challenges actually scaling up to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of parts. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it's kind of it's quite interesting. And with guys like you and all these Etsy stores, you're all pushing kind of the upper limits of what 3D printing can do, and you're also at the same time demonstrating how inexpensive it can be. Like you're doing thousands of parts, you've done thousands of parts, and it's still just one person managing these printers.
Yeah, and I would also say to that though, maybe this is a second interview or second show, but I come from a financial background. I'm a real estate broker. I own my own real estate company. I have a degree in finance and real estate. I spent a lot of time with my numbers and knowing how long stuff takes to print and how much my time is. I would argue that there's probably a lot of guys in the 3D printed field on Etsy who are spinning their wheels and think they're making money and they really aren't, which
Yeah,
is why they can never seem to go full time with it. Because
yeah,
I can tell you right now, this business is nearly replacing my full time job as far as revenue goes.
that's awesome. That's wonderful to hear. I think we should maybe I'm thinking we should have a show like with our CEO Steph, because she comes from a finance background, just comparing, just looking at actual breaking down the cost of 3D printing. I think that'd be fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Well, thanks
Hey,
so
it was
much.
great to be on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thanks to anyone who stuck around to the end of the stream. There's some like pretty cool conversation going. So yeah, please check out Sam's store. I already know a couple of people I might refer to this, especially if they're looking for Christmas gifts. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
that
and
time of year.
yeah, it is exactly. Hopefully you can keep up with the demand.
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.